Hello everyone. So giving everyone here a quick video today, obviously a bit of a different format. You're not actually seeing my face at all. You're simply seeing just the computer screen in front of you. So today I want to do a quick writing instruction video, and what this is going to be on, it's going to be on just an editing technique that I call the return key technique or the enter key technique. It's not something that I've actually ever seen taught on YouTube. I'm sure there might be another name for it, or some people might just do it and not think it's an actual technique at all. Just for the sake of simplicity, I tend to call it a technique. And so what it is it's just a means of making line editing a little bit simpler. So if you're perhaps going through the editing process, if you are going through any sort of stage where you're looking to make sentence level corrections, the return key technique can be very, very helpful. So let's get into it. Really simply, what the technique is you take every single sentence in a certain work. So for example, I'm just going to use one paragraph from my current tarot section. So this right here is a very fresh section. I wrote it the other day. So it's a first draft. It's sitting here, and I'm just going to go through and do a quick edit, basically just do a demonstration on it with you for everybody. So what you do is you take a paragraph, you take a section that you're looking to work on, and you make every single sentence its own paragraph. So here's what you do. So click and watch. So first sentence, its own paragraph. Second, we're just going to go down the line here. 2, 3, sentence 4, sentence 5, sentence 6, sentence 7, sentence 8, and the 9th sentence. All right, so before I get into it and start making these corrections, one thing to notice about this is that the brilliance of the technique is that it allows you not only to look at each sentence on its own, but you also get a sense for the rhythm. So for people that maybe are a bit more visual, if you're like myself, where you have to see things rather than being very auditory skilled or auditory learners, this can be very, very helpful, because what you're going to see here basically is an entire variation where you have, like, my first sentence is pretty long, second sentence is just about as long, then all of a sudden you notice, all right, third line is pretty short, fourth line is very short, then we're back to a long one, then we're back to a short sentence, a shorter sentence, long, then short again. So you can kind of see basically your own variation as well. So if you're looking to build up things like looking at your sentence rhythm, just seeing how well the story flows, one of the techniques basically is just to write it out like this, so you can actually see the sort of variation in the pattern. But let's get into the actual editing skills. So now that everything's its own paragraph, all you do is you just go through and make your own line edits. But the sort of happiness and the sort of advantage basically of doing it with the enter key is that you're also that every single sentence is going to stand out. So every sentence on here is going to have, I feel, at least for me, a lot more staying power. You're not reading it as several blocks in an entire wall, or several bricks in a wall. You're looking at each individual brick now, and it's a lot easier when they are their own paragraph. So let's go through it. Let's do a quick line edit on my work. One of the big things I'm just scanning right now is that I tend to use a lot of repeated phrases in my first drafts. I'm certainly not perfect, and you're going to notice a lot right here. So let's get into the first sentence. When I got home, I went through my mail, letters, direct mail flyers, and junk mail I was storing inside a recycled cardboard box at my back door. All right, so we see tons of highlights here. All right, so mail, junk mail, right? So we got to change that. So let's change to went through my mail, the letters, direct mail flyers is kind of redundant, right? Direct flyers. How about junk correspondence? No. Mail I was storing inside her side cover box at the back door. All right. Junk letters. I'm not sure what I would do for that. What's another word for junk mail? All right. So I'm gonna skip that one for right now. As you can see, though, at some point we gotta address the mail part here. Second sentence. It was all the mail I was gonna throw out, but the trash bins outside were still turned over, and I still hadn't gotten around to cleaning them up. All right. So I use the word mail again. So in this case, I think the word correspondence works a lot better. So you're getting rid of the word mail, and you get the same sense, right? It was all the correspondence I was going to throw out, but the trash bins inside were still turned over, and I hadn't gotten around to cleaning them up. Well, you don't really clean up trash bins that are turned over, right? You pick them up. So I'll just go much more simple around to picking them up. So picking up instead. Third sentence. I tried to think back to what Carl Jacobs had told me. That works fine. That works fine by itself. Was I able to make a real attempt at contacting my mother? This is where it gets tough because I don't want to say, was I going to get a hold of my mother or was I going to contact my mother? Because the question is, does the character have the capacity to do that? So looking at this, was I able to make a real attempt? Did I have it in me to make a real attempt at contacting my mother? Even that doesn't necessarily sound that strong. So that sentence right there, basically, we're going to keep as is right now and go back to it. I just don't want to keep everyone here all day because it did come up with sort of the exact sentence. It's going to take a little bit of time for me. Fifth line, I pictured an orange jumpsuit sitting in a barred cell along some noisy row, penning letters by some of the hallway lights after that's very clunky. Okay, so I pictured an orange jumpsuit sitting in a barred cell. That's good. Along some noisy row, it's like, get rid of that. You don't need that. Just sitting in a barred cell, penning letters by some of the hallway lights after lockdown. Let's change it to something else. Penning letters by some faint hallway light after lockdown. So I pictured her in an orange jumpsuit sitting in a barred cell, penning letters by some faint hallway light after lockdown. That's better. That's a lot better. That's how long it's been since you've seen her. I thought that works. Just as its own sort of line. I didn't even know what her prison looked like. I suppose it would be prison cell looked like, but I'm using the word cell twice up here and down here. I would keep it, at some point and describe more of the actual item. I need to be more specific with what, I don't even know what her prison life was like. What her prison life was like. Even that, I don't necessarily think it's the best sentence, but it's much better. I didn't even know what her prison life was like. I didn't even know what her prison looked like. All I had was cliches. These cliched. All I had were these cliched images. Now, the problem with using the word cliched, with using the word cliche here in this sentence, this line right here, very, very important. So anytime you do that, you do run a risk of sort of revealing a little bit of your own lack of skill as a writer, because the reader is going to know on some level, it's believable. This character just has the cliched images of what prison life is like. But the reader's also going to think you're just acknowledging this because you as the writer can't come up with a more original idea for what their prison cell looked like. You as a writer, that is your frame of reference. So it's a bit dangerous to use a sentence like that. I think maybe like once in a story it might work if you do a little bit of that sort of like self-referential line. I may end up I'll probably end up cutting that at some point, but I suppose now let's put that in as a placeholder, and then if I decide to cut it later, I guess I will. The third to last line, I tried to remember her face, but I can remember her light brown eyebrows and large pupils staring back at me from a rear view mirror. So we have the word remember twice here, right? So we have remember. All right. I tried to remember her face, but I could only recall, right? So when I use that, her light eyebrows and large pupils staring back at me from a rear view mirror, that's okay. That's not bad. That I'm watching you face on the second last line, that I'd so often seen on the exasperated bus drivers at my public schools, but in those early days I assumed was an expression unique to her. Let's say it again. So that I'm watching you face, that I'd so often, let's get rid of that comma there, that I'm watching you face, that I'd so often seen on the exasperated bus drivers at my public schools. But in those early days, I assumed was an expression unique to her. It doesn't quite work, does it? Doesn't quite sound. It doesn't. There's a sound. Something that sounds off, right? I've seen it on exasperated bus drivers at my public schools, but in those early days, I assumed was an expression. I assumed this was an expression unique. But in those early days, I assumed this was an expression unique to her. A decade of recollection compressed into one small rectangle, because she's referring to back. Obviously, the rectangle is a reference, obviously, to the rear view mirror in the prior section. It works. It's not the best, but as you can see, it's definitely better than what I just had a few minutes ago. So again, this was mostly designed just as kind of a teaching tool, just something, again, so you can get an idea for the technique itself. Not so much an examination of how bad my first drafts are. So yes, I hope this helps you out. Again, the real advantage of doing this is just being able to see every single sentence by itself rather than reading them one by one in a paragraph and not having a lot of the errors stick out. I know for myself, if I tend to read sentences that are part of just larger paragraphs without doing this sort of technique, things tend to run, right? The sentences tend to run one after another, and because they run so quickly when you're reading them at times, they don't stand out, and these little mistakes are able to slip underneath you. So again, just a small technique. I do hope it helps you out if you're doing some line edits. It can be very, very helpful to do that and to analyze more of the structure of the rhythm of how your sentences sound when you're writing it. Any kind of questions on the technique, let me know. Otherwise, that'll be it for this video.